now trying to hold on. Can Peloton put him down? And that is a knockdown for Pereira.
What if I told you that a UFC champion once dropped out of school at just 12 years old, spent his teenage years fixing tires for pennies, and nearly lost his life to alcohol before ever throwing a punch in a professional ring? When you hear the name Alex Pereira, images of dazzling knockouts, ferocious power, and 2 UFC championship belts likely come to mind. But ask yourself this before we begin. What does it take for a young boy from one of the toughest neighborhoods in Brazil who quit school at age 12, spent years in a tire shop surrounded by alcoholism and hard living,
Já perdidão mesmo, eu bebia quase 1 litro por dia.
Uau, tá louco, velho.
Até meio-dia eu tomava 3 cachaças. Eram umas 10.
and had no early athletic pedigree to rise all the way to the pinnacle of mixed martial arts? This is not a story of overnight success. This is a story of survival, transformation, and the brutal forging of character through hardship. Alex Pereira was born on July 7, 1987, in São Bernardo do Campo, São Paulo, Brazil, one of the sprawling urban centers, where life is often a struggle and dreams are expensive. Growing up in a favela, a densely populated slum environment marked by limited opportunity, economic hardship, and frequent exposure to violence, shaped his worldview from an early age. There was no guarantee of stability, no structured path to success, and certainly no promise of a future in professional sport.
For a long time, your debut did not disappoint.
Bom, treinei muito para isso. Muito obrigado a todo mundo.
Thank you very much, everybody that supported me. I also thank my opponent for making this fight with me.
For Alex and his large family, one of 7 siblings simply surviving was an achievement. At just 12 years old, instead of focusing on schoolwork, Alex made the difficult decision to drop out of middle school, not out of laziness, but out of necessity. With little formal education and a family counting on every contribution it could get, he found himself working long, grueling hours at a local tire shop, fixing tires, exchanging rims, mounting and balancing wheels. It was hard physical labor for little money, but it meant he could bring something home to help support his family. The tire shop was more than a job, it was a crucible. Surrounded by men older than him, spending days bent over dirty rims and engines, Alex was initiated into a harsh environment. These co-workers, in a macho, blue-collar setting, pushed him into things no child should endure. At first hesitant, he was exposed to alcohol first beer, then cheap spirits. And before long, he found himself drinking regularly, trying to fit in, trying to cope with the bleakness of his situation. It didn't take long for that early exposure to become a full-blown addiction.
Anyone with addictions, and in that environment, I was introduced to some bad things like alcohol. I was only 12 years old, and
by the time he was in his mid-teens, Alex was known to drink nearly 1 liter of Brazilian cachaça a day, along with beer. He has spoken candidly about how this period nearly derailed his life entirely. So when you think about the world Alex Pereira came from, don't imagine leisure or comfort. Imagine backbreaking work, early mornings, and a pervasive sense that life might only offer 2 outcomes: struggle or escape. And yet, in that environment, something inside him was restless. Something refused to give in. It was around his early 20s, after years of drinking, heavy industry work, and aimless living, that Pereira confronted arguably the most difficult opponent of his life, himself. He had tried to quit drinking multiple times, only to fall back into the routine that had become his crutch. Sports, he later said, became the only thing that offered him a real chance at escape. Unlike most Brazilians, he was never particularly good at soccer, the sport that grips the nation, but he knew he could fight. He had fought on the streets many times as a youth, not as sport, but as survival. At age 21, Alex walked into a kickboxing gym for the first time, not to pursue championship glory, but to try to break free from alcoholism and find some structure in his life. He had nothing to lose and everything to gain. What started as a therapeutic attempt to change his lifestyle soon sparked a profound transformation of identity. The gym became his sanctuary. The punching bag became his confession. The discipline of martial arts offered him the structure the street had never given. And almost immediately, he showed natural talent. Under coaches who began noticing his potential, Alex developed quickly.
Watan means hands of stone. My first coach gave me that nickname. I even have a tattoo of a rock because of it.
He was strong, heavy-handed, and had a powerful left hook early in his combat career. His amateur record suggests that he had fought 28 bouts with 25 knockouts, signaling an exceptional striking ability well before his professional breakout. Despite the promise he showed, his early years in kickboxing were not easy. He was balancing training with physical, demanding work, scraping together gym fees, and often struggling to stay sober. But slowly, boxing and kickboxing began pulling him out of the void that had nearly consumed him. They gave him goals, structure, and something he never had before, a purpose he could chase instead of a bottle to cling to. By 2009, his transformation was underway. He wasn't just training, he was competing. By 2012, Alex Pereira began competing professionally, and by 2017, he captured the Glory Kickboxing Middleweight Championship, kicking off an era where he became one of the most feared and respected strikers in the world. He would go on to add the Glory Light Heavyweight title, making him a two-division champion in one of the sport's premier kickboxing organizations. Yet even as his star rose in kickboxing, Alex's demons did not simply melt away. He had struggled with alcohol for years, and it took him multiple attempts over several years to quit drinking for good.
UFC fight pass. Oh, dips to the body. You can see when he starts dancing a little bit, starting to find it. Pereira has him against the fence. A shot from Silva in return. Your winner by unanimous.
He has openly said that he had to face himself more than any opponent and realize he was throwing his life away before he could commit fully to martial arts. An important shift in his career and life came with his rivalry with Israel Adesanya, the Nigerian-born striker who later became a UFC champion. Pereira had defeated Adesanya twice in kickboxing, and Adesanya's subsequent rise in the UFC, including public comments, lit a fire inside Alex. Hearing his old rival's words while sitting in a bar became a moment of clarity. He realized that he wasn't just fighting opponents, he was fighting himself, his habits, and his past. That realization helped him stop drinking once and for all, and fully devote himself to professional fighting at the highest level. With that focus, he decided to take the most significant leap of his career, moving from kickboxing into mixed martial arts and the UFC. In 2021, Alex Pereira made his UFC debut at UFC 268, where he faced Andreas Michailidis and won by a second-round TKO, signaling that his striking prowess would transfer into the octagon. But his rise didn't stop with a single debut. Just 3 fights into his UFC career, he earned a shot at the middleweight title. At UFC 281, he faced his old rival Israel Adesanya, now a UFC legend and reigning champion, in a dramatic rematch on the biggest stage in MMA. In a breathtaking performance, Pereira dismantled Adesanya and captured the UFC middleweight championship with a 5th-round TKO, a defining moment of his career. That victory was not just another title win. It was the culmination of a life transformed. The boy who once worked for pennies at a tire shop, who struggled with addiction, who had no formal education. Past age 12, he had become not just a champion, but an embodiment of resilience. He had conquered the toughest fight of all, himself. Yet his path continued. After losing and regaining aspects of his middleweight stature, Pereira made another bold decision. He moved up to light heavyweight, a larger division with physically imposing athletes, and faced Jiří Procházka at UFC 295. In an electrifying performance, he won the light heavyweight championship, becoming a two-division UFC champion, a feat achieved by only a select few in the sport's history. His accomplishments inside the octagon showcase his evolution as a fighter. Not only did he dominate as a striker with historically devastating power and precise timing, but he also adapted to the diverse skill set MMA requires, improving his takedown defense, his clinch work, and his overall fight strategy. However, Pereira's journey has not been a straight ascent. In March 2025, he faced Magomed Ankalaev at UFC 313, where he lost the light heavyweight belt by unanimous decision. Despite the loss, his response was telling. He did not wallow. He acknowledged the lesson, respected the challenge, and committed to coming back stronger, the same mentality that had saved him from addiction years before. Pereira's story is not merely about titles and statistics. It's about transformation, how a young boy overwhelmed by circumstance built himself back from the ground up, brick by brick, fight by fight. His early experiences in the favela, where violence, hunger, and poverty are everyday realities, taught him grit. His work in a tire shop taught him discipline and resilience. His struggle with alcohol taught him the importance of purpose and self-control. And his later training taught him focus and strategy. What qualities define Alex Pereira today? He is relentless, unabashedly confident, and supremely dangerous in standing exchanges. But beyond that, he embodies the belief that one's past does not dictate one's future, that the toughest battles against addiction, hardship, or self-doubt can become your greatest strengths. So when you watch Alex Pereira step into the cage, what you are witnessing is not just another fighter with knockout power. You are witnessing the product of a lifetime of struggle, a man who learned to fight not for fame or glory alone, but for survival, identity, purpose, and legacy. He didn't choose the easy path. He chose to face his demons, to rise above them, and to become something greater than anyone around him might once have expected. That is not just great fighting. That is greatness forged in fire. If stories of real struggle, real sacrifice, and fighters who earned everything from nothing inspire you, hit subscribe because this channel tells the stories behind the champions, not just the highlights.